In this video, we're going to spend a little bit of time with the new InsightWorks Cycle Count Scheduler. So the Cycle Count Scheduler works with the Advanced Inventory Count module from InsightWorks to help you automate the scheduling and creation of your cycle counts. So this is a great tool if you have multiple locations, like you have 20 retail outlets or 3 warehouses or things like that, and you want to plan those cycle counts by your physical inventory count period code, or what you would normally call your velocity code or ABC code, or any criteria you like. So let's go in. I'm going to open up the cycle count schedules, and you can see I've got a few different schedules defined here already. Just one for Maine, one for East, one for North. These are my different warehouses or retail outlets. And we can have multiple schedules per location as well. So for example, I might want to count my A items once per week, and maybe I count my B items every 3 weeks or something like that. So you have that ability to create multiple counts per location. I've just got these 3 defined here for these 3 different locations, and we can see some of the information about those counts here. But to see all the details, I'll open up the count card here, or the schedule card here. And what we see, a number of different things, but I'm going to start here on this side just to give you some background on how it actually determines what you should count. So the first field here is your full coverage frequency. So what this tells you is, based on the items that I want to count. So let's say maybe this is a schedule for my A items or something like that. I want to count those 4 times per year. So that doesn't mean I'm doing 4 inventory counts per year. I want to get full coverage. I want to count every item in the selection criteria I've listed here. I want to make sure I count those 4 times a year. So, and in this case, I'm going to start in January, the first month. So what that means is by the end of April, in this case, beginning of April, end of March, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have counted all of my items once. And then I'll do it again and again and again until I've counted those items a total of 4 times. Okay. Now, how often I count them is determined by the cycle count frequency here. So this is saying I can count once per week. And then over here, I'll get to this in a moment, but this gives us a calendar. So we can say I only want to count on Fridays, or I only have Tuesdays and Thursdays when I can do my cycle counts, or I'm going to be closed down for a week, so I don't want to do a count that week, or something like that. So you've got that ability to also maintain a calendar of when you're actually able to perform these counts. And so between those two things, this is telling me that I'm doing 1 count per week, and I want to count enough inventory each week so that I can count all of my stock 4 times per year. So an example of this is, let's say I have 400 items that I need to count based on this schedule, based on the selection I've made down here. So in here, you can come in and do your physical inventory count period code. You can set filters for your items or item categories or whatever you like. So there's a number of things you can do here to determine which items we're actually performing on this cycle count schedule. But let's say based on this selection criteria down here, I've got 400 items that I need to count. And I said I want to count those, 4 times a year. So really every 3 months, I need to count those items. Well, actually, let's say 300 items, just to make the math easier. So I'm counting 4 times a year. So every 3 months, I have to count a total of 300 items. And that means every month I count 100 items. I need to count 100 items per month. And if I'm only counting once a week, that means I need to count about 25 items per week to do this. So the system is automatically going to create an inventory count for me for 25 items to count based on the selection criteria and some of the other things that you can set, like random items or sorting by bin or by item or whatever you like. And it's going to go out and generate that count for 25 items. And then if I don't count those 25 items that week, maybe I only count 5, it'll take the remaining 20 items that I didn't count, and it'll keep them in the pool and add them to subsequent counts. So it keeps track of what you've counted and ensures that you're going to be counting the appropriate number of items to meet your criteria. So after 3 months, I've counted my 300 items, and then it starts from scratch again. All right. So that's basically how it works. Now on the calendar side, again, I mentioned you can determine which days or define which days you're able to count. So if we look at this, I've got this main count thing here for my main location. This is my cycle count calendar, where I can only count on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but maybe one of these weeks I'm not allowed to count on this Thursday, so I can block that off. And if a count happens to fall on that schedule, it just won't let me do it. It'll push it out to the next available date. So you can set up customized count like primary calendars, and then you can also go in and set up customizations to those calendars as well for specific vacations, or maybe your employees are off that day or something like that, and you can avoid scheduling a count on those days. So again, this selection criteria allows you to determine what items you're counting, how often you need to count them, and the system will automatically determine the quantity of items you need to count per cycle count. Now over here, there's a few additional things. I mentioned the calendar already. This is the last time we did our inventory count. So it calculates the next earliest available time or date we can count that. Now again, if this January 8th here isn't a Tuesday or Thursday, it's not going to schedule it on that date. It'll schedule it on a different date. And then down here, we've got some options for how we create it. So you can create these schedules and just leave them as disabled until you're ready to use them, or if you don't need to use them for a while, you can disable them. And then we've got job queue and manual. And what this allows you to do, if you use the job queue, is have this thing automatically run and schedule your inventory counts completely automatically. So if you've got 20 locations, retail outlets or something like that, or warehouses, every morning it can run the schedule, pick up whatever counts it needs to schedule, and then automatically email those off to the people at those locations to complete, either as a PDF or an Excel sheet. And of course, if you're using WMS Express with the advanced inventory count module added in, or if you're using Warehouse Insight, these counts will automatically show up on the handheld scanners, and they can go and do their inventory counts, their cycle counts, using those scanners, and they just magically show up for the employees. Now, the way we generate that count, this one's set to manual, so I manually go up here and hit generate counts, but you can create a template for that inventory count, that cycle count. And the templates are exactly like the normal advanced inventory count sheets that you may be familiar with. And let's just actually have a look at what those look like. So this allows you to set all of your different options, like how it's going to post, all of those sorts of things. But the more important part of it is, here's where you can set up your count sheets. So in this case, it's a very simple one. That's my sort of standard, cycle count template. I've got one sheet. All of the items that I need to count will be added to the sheet, but I can add in additional filters and all sorts of fun stuff in here as well. If we just go to this next template, you'll get an idea of that. So this one is I'm counting a specific warehouse. This is my template for counting my warehouse locations. And you can see I've broken up my cycle count into two sheets, one for the east side and one for the west side of the warehouse. And I've set some bin filters in here to segregate those items out across those two sheets. So the cycle count scheduler uses all of this to generate the inventory count for me automatically. Okay, so let's get out of here and go back to the count schedule card. And now we've got the ability to merge the counts. So I mentioned earlier that we can have multiple counts for the same location. Maybe I want to count my A items every week and my B items every 2 weeks. Well, if that schedule happens to schedule those two counts on the same day, we can have it automatically merge those counts onto a single count. So now I've got one count where I do my A's and my B's together. And then we can also merge the count sheet lines themselves onto a single sheet. So instead of having, sheet 1 for my A's and sheet 2 for my B's, I would just have sheet 1, or whatever you want to call it, for all of the items that I need to count on there. Okay, so that's a little bit of the background. Again, the magic in this is the ability to set how often you want to count and how many times a year you want full coverage. And once you've got that set up, all you have to do is hit generate counts, or as I mentioned, go into the job queue and set it up to do it automatically. In this case, when I hit it from here, it loads up this specific count, and I hit OK, and it'll go out. It'll generate that count for me automatically. It sets my next earliest count date and everything else. It will have emailed this particular person a PDF copy of the count, or as I mentioned, Excel or PDF, and send it to them, and they can use that as a trigger to start their inventory count, and we're good to go. Now, if you want to see what that looks like, let's just open up that inventory count here. And there it is, just created it. And we'll open up that count. And you can see it's set the description, all those sorts of things. But here's the sheet. It's populated that sheet with all the items I need to count for this specific cycle count. Right? Now again, once I filled this in and copied it to journals and posted it and all that sort of thing, these items will not show up on the next sheet. It's going to keep going and work through my item list until I've got everything covered after those few months. Now, you might be wondering why it added 4 items onto that particular sheet. Well, let's actually expand this out and we can see. So when it did that calculation, it said, okay, based on the filters, this item selection stuff that I put here, it found 50 items that needed to be counted for this particular schedule. And so what it does is it takes those 50 items and it says, okay, well, we need to count 50 items, every 3 months, right? Because we're counting them 4 times a year, and we're doing 1 a week. So we've got basically 12 weeks, worth of counting that we can actually do. So 50 items divided by 12 weeks gives us roughly 4 items per count. That's how it got that number. And again, if I didn't count those items, it would take those 4 items and keep them in the pool for the next time I do it. And the next time I'd maybe have to count 5 items because, we have 1 less week to count because we skipped them this week. So that's how the system works. Again, very straightforward. You can come in here, you basically set up, how many times you want full coverage, how often you want to count, run generate count sheets. You can set your calendar and everything else, and it'll automatically generate those sheets, send out the email with the count, and you can execute the count the way you normally do in the standard InsightWorks Advanced Inventory Count module. The Cycle Count Scheduler is free. It's a free add-on to the Advanced Inventory Count module, and it makes life much, much simpler if you have multiple locations. And even if you have a single location where you want to schedule the cycle counts, it just saves you all of the additional work of setting it up manually. You just run the command and you've got your cycle counts to execute.
Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content.